Hey everyone. The story you're about to hear was sent to me by a viewer named Mark from upstate New York. It's a true account of a terrifying experience that happened to him and his wife a few years ago. He asked me to share it with you all, in the hope that maybe, just maybe, someone out there has an explanation. Mark's story is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying things aren't the ones you can see, but the ones you can't, and that they're already inside. For 2 years, my wife Sarah and I had been saving up for our first house. We were tired of renting, tired of landlords, and tired of living in a cookie-cutter apartment complex where the only thing that distinguished one unit from the next was the color of the front door. We wanted character. We wanted a home with history. When we found the old 2-story on the outskirts of town, it felt like a sign. It was a fixer-upper. For sure, the siding was peeling, the front porch was rotting, and the interior was a time capsule of the 1970s. But it had good bones, as the realtor kept saying. A big yard with an old oak tree, a dusty attic that promised forgotten treasures, and a spacious basement that was just begging to be turned into a media room. The house had been empty for nearly a year after the last owner, an elderly woman, had passed away. Her children wanted to sell it as is, and the price was a bargain. We signed the papers and got the keys that spring. The first few weeks were a blur of painting, ripping up shag carpet, and scraping off decades of wallpaper. We were exhausted, but exhilarated. We felt like we were breathing new life into the old place. The first strange thing happened on the 3rd week. We were in the living room, working on painting the walls a light gray. It was late, maybe 10 p.m., and we were listening to a podcast. Suddenly, from the top of the stairs, we heard a distinct sound. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like someone was slowly dragging a heavy box down each wooden step. Sarah and I froze, paint rollers in hand. Our dog, a golden retriever named Gus, was curled up in a corner, and he didn't even stir. This was odd. Gus barked at the slightest sound, a squirrel in the yard, a car passing by, even the mailman's truck. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. "Yeah," Sarah said, her voice barely audible. "What is that?" We listened. The thumping stopped for a moment, then started again. Thump, thump, thump. It was louder now, closer. It sounded like it was on the bottom step. I grabbed the baseball bat we had leaning against the wall, just in case. I slowly crept toward the entrance of the living room, my heart pounding in my ears. Sarah was right behind me, holding a can of paint like a weapon. I peered around the corner. The hallway was empty. The stairs were empty. There was nothing, just the faint sound of our blood rushing in our ears. "Maybe it was the house settling?" Sarah suggested. A little too quickly. We both knew that was a lie. We'd heard the house settle. It was a series of creaks and groans, not the heavy, deliberate thumping we just heard. We went upstairs and checked every room. Nothing was out of place. The attic door was still bolted shut. We even checked the bedroom closets. Nothing. We spent the rest of the night on edge, but nothing else happened. We wrote it off as a one-time weird occurrence, the kind of thing you expect from an old house. But it wasn't a one-time thing. A few days later, we were in the kitchen. The cabinets and drawers, which had been perfectly fine, suddenly began to open. Not all at once, but one after the other. First, the silverware drawer slid open with a soft clatter. We looked at it, then at each other. Then, a cabinet above the sink swung open, revealing a stack of plates. Then, another, and another. It was like an invisible person was opening them, one by one, on a path through our kitchen. Sarah grabbed my arm. "What's going on?" she whispered, her eyes wide. I had no answer. It was the same feeling as before, a presence, but no person. We tried to rationalize it. Old drawers stick. Maybe they were just a bit loose and the air pressure changed. But we knew that wasn't it. The movements were too deliberate, too specific. The incidents continued. Always a little different. Always a little more personal. One evening, after a long day of work, I was in the shower. I'd left my phone on the bathroom counter, playing a playlist of classic rock. The water was hot and steamy, and I was just starting to relax when the music stopped. I figured it was a connectivity issue. Maybe the Wi-Fi had dropped. But then, a new song started playing, and it wasn't on my playlist. It was an old, tinny-sounding lullaby, a music box melody. It was the kind of thing you'd hear in a scary movie, and it was so out of place that it sent a shiver down my spine. The melody was repetitive and simple, and it sounded like it was coming from something small, close to the microphone. I quickly shut off the water, grabbed a towel, and looked at my phone. The Spotify app was open, but the screen was just a black void with the lullaby playing. It wasn't the song I'd been listening to, and it wasn't any song I recognized. I tried to pause it, but the screen was unresponsive. I tried to close the app. Nothing. I had to force restart the phone to get it to stop. When I told Sarah about it, she just held me. We were both starting to get genuinely scared. This wasn't just a quirky old house anymore. This was something else. Something malicious. We started looking up the history of the house. We found out that the woman who had lived there was named Eleanor Vance. She had no children and had lived alone for the last 30 years of her life. The neighbors we spoke to all said she was a quiet, reclusive woman, and the only thing they knew was that she died peacefully in her sleep. No murders, no tragedies, nothing that would explain what was happening. We were at a dead end. We started to feel like we were being watched, that this thing was getting a thrill out of our fear. The next incident was the worst. It was a Saturday morning, and we were having breakfast in the kitchen. The sun was streaming through the window, making the room feel warm and safe. I was just about to take a bite of my toast when I saw it. On the wall in front of me, in a thin layer of dust that had accumulated, were markings. Not just any markings. They were a series of tally marks, scratched into the dust. I dropped my toast, my eyes fixed on the wall. Sarah saw it too. There were 3 sets of 4 marks, and a final, single mark next to them. I knew what they were. Tally marks, as if someone was counting. But what were they counting? And that's when I noticed it. Next to the final mark, just beneath it, were 2 initials. E.W. Eleanor Vance. My blood ran cold. The woman who had owned the house before us. And then, I noticed something else. The marks weren't just scratched in. They were drawn with a finger. And in the middle of the E and the V was a perfect, tiny fingerprint. I leaned closer, my mind racing. It was too small to be mine, or Sarah's. It was a child's fingerprint. Sarah started to cry. "What is this?" she sobbed. "What does it mean?" I didn't want to say it, but the thought was screaming in my mind. It was counting us, or something was. We decided we had to leave. We packed up what we could and stayed at a hotel for a week, trying to figure out what to do. But every time we thought about the house, we felt a terrifying pull, as if it was calling to us. We felt stupid, but we knew we couldn't just walk away from our home. We decided to go back and confront whatever was there. The house was silent when we returned. The air was heavy, the silence oppressive. We went from room to room, just checking. The drawers were all shut. The wall was clean. The house looked exactly as we had left it. This gave us a sense of false security. We started to feel like we had been overreacting. Maybe the time away was what we needed. We started to unpack, and things went back to normal. For a few days, anyway. One night, I woke up to Sarah screaming, The bed is moving." I sat up, my mind a fog of sleep. The bed was shaking, not violently, but with a deliberate, rhythmic rocking. It felt like a gentle hand was pushing against the mattress. I tried to grab Sarah, but she was shaking uncontrollably, her eyes fixed on something behind me. I turned around. The door to our bedroom, which we had left ajar, was slowly closing. I could hear the doorknob turning, and then it clicked shut. We were trapped. The rocking of the bed intensified. It was a violent tremor now, shaking us both back and forth. I could feel the sheets pulling at my feet, and I looked down. The covers were being tugged, slowly, deliberately, down to the foot of the bed. Sarah was screaming, a high-pitched wail of pure terror. And then, a cold voice, a child's voice, raspy and thin, came from the foot of the bed. "You're in my room." Sarah screamed again, this time louder, more panicked. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. I turned on the flashlight and pointed it at the end of the bed, and that's when I saw it. A small figure, barely 3 feet tall, was standing there. It was translucent, a pale outline of a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. Her eyes were 2 black, empty voids. She was wearing a simple nightgown, and her pale hands were gripping the sheets. And she was smiling, a wide, toothless grin that stretched her face into a grotesque mask. She looked at us, her head tilted, and her smile widened. Her voice, that same raspy whisper, came again. "You're in my room, and you have to leave." Suddenly, the bed stopped shaking. The air went still, and the chilling cold that had been in the room vanished. The little girl's figure started to blur, her outline fading until she was gone. The door swung open, revealing the dark hallway. We didn't need any more convincing. We flew out of bed, grabbed the dog, and ran out of the house, not even bothering to grab our keys or our phones. We got in the car, and I floored it, not looking back. We drove to a motel 10 miles away, and we never went back to the house. We sold it a month later, taking a massive loss. And we never told the new owners what we experienced. We just wanted to be done with it. I still have nightmares about that night. The little girl's smile, the cold hands, the chilling feeling of being in our own home, only to discover that we were never truly alone. And the worst part is, I don't think we ever will be. A terrifying story from Mark. A perfect example of a haunting that goes beyond simple noises and shadows, and becomes something deeply personal, something that taunts and terrorizes. What do you think was happening in that house? Was it the spirit of Eleanor Vance, a child, or something else entirely? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please like, comment, and subscribe.